I got to see quite a few films today, and the first one I want to talk about is Dead to Rights, the new 2025 film, which the events of the Nanjing Massacre that took place in 1937 after Japan invaded China. Now, this is come to find out based on a true story. Now, going into this film, I had no idea what it was about. I had no idea really that was based. I had absolutely no idea it was based on a true story. I just kind of knew it was kind of like a warish film. Again, I actually was supposed to see Highest and Lowest, the new Spike Lee remake of the Akira Kurosawa film. But due to Fandango and just their issues their app, end up not being able to see it. Because originally, how I came across this film was actually kind of funny because I was actually mapping out my movie day. And this was, I actually had to go to AMC because the art house there I go to was like one of the only theaters I could find showing Highest and Lowest. AMC wasn't showing it, and then there was like 2 or 3 films that I haven't seen yet, but they were all pretty much your new blockbusters that AMC was showing. So as an A-list member, I'm not going to pay to see a movie. I can just drive 10 minutes up the road and go to the AMC and see it for free. So I originally mapped out to see Highest to Lowest, and then I was going to see Dead to Rights, and then I was going to end up ending the day with Freaky Friday. But of course, Fandango messed my thing up, couldn't get my screening right. So instead of paying for another ticket, I was just like, the hell with it. I'm just going to skip Highest and Lowest. I know it comes out on streaming in like 2 weeks probably, so ended up rearranging movie day and made this my first feature of the day. And again, went completely blind. The way I found out about this film was simply just from looking up to see what was playing at the theater. And this did get a very limited release because from what I can see, this is the theater I went to was one of the only ones in the tri-state area that I could see. It was actually showing the film, and I am super glad that I went and saw this film because I'd have to start by saying, even though we're like 2 minutes into the review, that this without question is probably going to be in my top 5 favorite films of the year without question. Definitely one of my more favorite war films, even though it's not essentially a war film. Like, it's not necessarily a film that is about, soldiers on the front lines. It's more about the aftermath of an invasion and the events that take place during times of war, and really gives us this gritty insight on how devastating war can be, or how devastating war is even to the civilians and a country in which that is being invaded. And I think it's one of the I've seen a lot of war films. Again, some of your highest regards are like Saving Private Ryan, Hacksaw Ridge, Black Hawk Down, with Desert Storm. You had Platoon, quite a few Vietnam films. But I feel like as far as there's a lot. I mean, I always know people kind of reference saying, they always kind of put Saving Private Ryan as like one of the top war films. And I feel like this one definitely hits harder than Saving Private Ryan. I mean, Saving Private Ryan, again, they're 2 vastly different films. They even look like Platoon. Like Born on the 4th. It feels closer to like, I can't say it feels closer to Born on the 4th of July because that, again, it's a different type of film that is a ripple effect of war, whereas this one's more of the ripple effect of an invasion. And we kind of see these hard acts. And the fact this is based on a true story, I didn't know that going in. And as you're watching the film, these acts are horrendous of what these Japanese soldiers are doing to these Chinese citizens. And it's very hard to settle. It's very unsettling. Like, even while watching the film, there were some moments that were really unsettling during the screening. And because even though I didn't know this was based on a true story, just the acts felt very real and realistic. Like, they didn't do anything in this film that would be, in my opinion, far-fetched or impossible, or things that would be outside of the norm of war crimes. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were definitely some horrendous acts and there were a lot of war crimes being committed, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities. And especially have seen a lot of and done a little research on times of war in that kind of era, and in like Southeast Asia or Asia in general, they do. I've seen a lot of like Japanese films of that time that have a certain portrayal, and doing some research into that shows that there was a lot of unfavorable notions of how these soldiers were trained, and their overall moral compass wasn't really there, and they weren't as honorable as people might think they'd be. They weren't really trained to be honorable people, honorable soldiers, so to speak. So while watching that, it kind of had that in the back of my head, and just kind of seeing these hard acts, it really kind of sways the emotional whirlpool of the film, and you really have this insightful look on these characters who are just trying to survive. You have these Chinese characters who, one in which is a translator who is a quote-unquote friend of the Japanese, and he works with them because the overall cover story, if you will, is that the Japanese are trying to make this transition as they take over China, that it's a friendly not friendly takeover, but they are making it in which they're not breaking any laws, or they're not doing anything unconventional, or committing war crimes, and that they're treating the civilians lawfully. And it's they're trying to befriend these Chinese people to make that transition. And we have a photographer. Well, no, he's a male clerk who poses as a photographer, who ends up helping this family who he's helping hide, in exchange for making these prints of the Japanese soldiers' findings. He's like a journalist for the Japanese, I think it was the 6th Infantry or something like that, 6th something, and he was the photographer, and he was documenting these heroic acts that the Japanese soldiers were overtaking these different areas and so on and so forth. And you kind of get, which gives us a very inside glimpse of all these horrible acts that are being taken place. Overall, and I'm kind of rambling now. Overall, the performances were astonishing. You had a really gritty insight to this natural instinct of survival and what people do when they're backed into a corner. And I think it really captures this story so well. And I think it's, again, one of the better war films that I've ever seen. And I will say it's a war film because, again, even though it's not taking place on the battlefield, there is definitely a battle being fought. And I cannot recommend this one enough. I'm going to have to give this one a Ferris Bueller just because of how purely cinematic this film feels. And when I say that, this is probably one of the most Scorsese versions of cinematic of a film that I've seen all year. Again, I'm not saying it's a highly entertaining film. This is like a popcorn movie. It's not a popcorn movie. It's a very intellectual insight on a very hard set of events that took place during the invasion of China in 1937. And it gives you a very detailed look, also while creating this secondary vision of what war is. Kind of even after the initial invasion's over, there still is this war going on, but in a very different light. Again, I think the film captures this beautifully. It's just, and by beautifully, I mean it captures this very, at times, hard to watch story in the best possible way. Again, this film is not for everybody, but I will say that it is a fantastic film, one that I cannot recommend enough. If you saw it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below. Let me know.